Hey, welcome to the 167. Today, Pastor Rick is hosting, and then we have a guest, Charissa Motley, as we talk about things we don't talk about. Welcome to the 167.
Hey, welcome to the 167 podcast. I am Pastor Rick, and I get to be your host today. And joining us in the lovely studio is, first of all, Miss Charissa. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Lucas.
Like in the lovely studio,
Yeah.
this lovely lady, and then there's Lucas.
Yeah, and then we get Lucas. So it is my privilege to be able to host today because this past Sunday, you were able to bring the message to our church family. We're in this series entitled Things We Don't Talk About. You know, we don't talk about all these different things. And this past week, we talked about what?
In the womb.
In the womb. See, I didn't even want to say it, really. It's just
You
kind
have
of,
to say
I
it
get a
like
little flush when
The whom.
Yeah. So, why that topic? Like, why'd we go there?
I think mostly I wanted to pick it because I that was my gut reaction. Like, even we've got this marriage conference coming up, and I asked one of the pastors, I was like, what do you think is your one thing in marriage that helped you? And immediately he was talked about transparency. And then he went, well, I don't know, like maybe, I was like, no, go with your gut reaction. Yep. And so when we said that, it was like, oh, the things that we don't talk about, I was like, oh, we don't talk about, like I said, miscarriages. We don't talk about infertility. A lot of times it's something that people suffer in silence with, and we don't talk about abortion because it's too political.
Yeah. So, the first question is, why do you think that's such a confusing issue in our culture? Why is it so taboo? Why don't we talk about it? You looked at Charissa, so Charissa, boom, you're on.
Well, I think I'm going to start with church. I think a lot of times we don't address these issues because they're sensitive. And I mean, I'm kind of here to, it's personal for women, right? It's a lot, I think, harder for women to talk about things that are personal. It's very much, it's in your body. It's something that feels really intimate. And so I just think that is a hard thing to talk about in front of a lot of people. Yeah. I think for a lot of people that is very, very personal. And you addressed that on Sunday. Like you said, that it's a personal topic. I think that's why we avoid it as churches. Culturally, I do think that people have strong opinions on again, bodily autonomy. I should be the one who is able to decide things like that. And so then when you have an issue that's like a miscarriage, right? Like that is a really confusing issue. It seems like it shouldn't be,
right?
But it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot that gets wrapped up in that, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about that on this episode. But just the fact that a miscarriage itself is called a spontaneous abortion in medical terms. And I think that immediately, like culturally, gets mixed up with the word abortion and all of that.
Yeah, it is. It's a emotional time. It's a confusing time. So I go back with Trudy and I back in our early days. So we had a miscarriage. We were excited. It was, going to be our first baby. And we just had issues, and we got scared, and some things started happening physically. It ended in miscarriage. Then she went back to the doctor, and he said, we need to do a DNC. Yeah. And it was like, ooh, that sounds terrible. Yeah. Right? And then all those emotions of what does that mean? Right. And you can't just go to anybody and say, what are your thoughts about that? Right? And
exactly.
So you just like, okay, whatever the doctor says, let's do it, and let's move on.
Right, exactly.
Well, and it's weird for guys too, because I think a lot of times in this conversation that we're having in culture, it's like, well, you're a guy, you don't get an opinion on this. And I'm like, I remember, just being devastated when we had our first miscarriage because I was scared for you. And then, of course, we went to the hospital, and they're looking at Charissa like, do you feel safe at home? Did he punch you in the stomach?
Exactly.
And I'm like standing right there. I'm like, what do you, like, I'm like weeping over our child, and they're like, did he do that? And And I'm like, this is so messed up.
Yeah, it's just again, it's sensitive. It is so personal. So
It's like when you have like your kids, you know, where it's like, hey, I skinned my knee, and they cover it up, and you're just like, well, let me look at it. I've got to drain the pus out of it. I've got to put something on it. And they're like, don't touch it, don't touch it. And it's like, that's what it feels like sometimes. Is you're like going, hey, let me help you, and people are like, I don't want you to touch this.
yeah, so I have an opinion, I think as you guys do as well, that there are so many lies that kind of encompass this whole topic of miscarriage, and the enemy steps in and just starts spewing the lies. What are some of the lies that you believe, or that you've heard, or that you've been a part of kind of combating in your life? What are some of those lies and distractions that surround, you know, this whole topic of miscarriage and abortion and all those things?
I think there's overall this understanding of, which I thought that you did a really nice job of just going into, not that we're saying politically, right, the issue of when does life begin, and people are confused about that, but you did a really nice job of addressing like spiritually what's happening. And so I think that there are a lot of lies though about what's in my body, and is that a person, and does that person have a soul, and is that what's going on. And so that the lies that come against us are just some of those things, right? It's do I understand what's happening? But I also think, on a personal level, one of the things that was really hard for me to come to terms with was that it wasn't my fault. And I think a lot of times there is a blame that comes in, probably for a lot of women, that I did something, my body failed me. If I wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't have happened, right? That whole series of events, that I somehow did something, which then, if I come to terms with I didn't do it, then it leads me to God must have done it, right? And so all of those lies get really, I think, tangled up in there when you're playing a blame game, because you want to know why it happened.
Exactly. Everybody wants to know why.
Why did this happen to me? Why is it, it's not an answerable question other than Satan hates all of us.
Yeah.
And
You and I do funerals, and it's like, I've heard, it's like the two sides of it, where the one side is like, oh, it's not your fault. And then the other side is like Christians trying to tell you stuff where it's like, God just wanted to have another baby to play with. And you're like, oh no, that is awful. Like, God did not do this to you. God didn't, be like, that baby's too cute. I gotta, like, that's messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you addressed, in the message, how sometimes we're just afraid to say anything. And so, from an outsider looking in, we're like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm not going to say anything, which then feeds into the lies and to the shame and the guilt and all that. So now everyone's avoiding me, and like, it's just a weird place to be.
It's a catch-22 in a lot of areas, because even in that area, like, you and I had a lot of talks going into this message where I'm like, I know people are in our church, and I know people in our church that have found freedom from this issue. But when you tell somebody, like, God loves you even before you were born, puts your soul in your body from conception, that should, be amazing to you. But for someone who's participated in abortion, then they go, well, now I've committed this sin, and it heats condemnation and guilt on them. And it's almost like you got to, like, take the nosedive and then pull the stick back up, where it's like, yes, that's true. Yes, that is sin. And yet the first part is still true, which is that God loves you and offers grace to you, and nobody here is judging you. Like Christ said that if we even hate somebody in our hearts, that we've committed murder. So nobody here is blameless in this, and nobody's going, this is a special sin that you're going to burn in hell. Like no, this is about, we want you to get freedom from that. But in order to get freedom from that, like there are times where I talk to people and they go, yeah, I don't know why I'm having a hard time in this area. And they'll start to describe their past to me. And I go, you were abused, and they didn't think of it as abuse. They thought of it as normal life. And then you tell them you were abused, which then heaps something on them where they're like, I was abused. And it's like, yes, but now let's get that off you. Now let's, like, find freedom from that. And it's a weird roller coaster to take people on. And so nobody wants to touch that, because on the off chance that they stop at step 2, they stop at that shame and that guilt. And it's like, no.
Right.
Go to step 3, which is grace, love, and forgiveness through Jesus Christ, and we're all equal in the eyes of the Lord.
I think part of the lie, the big lie that's thrown on us as individuals is that our situation is so unique and so different, and you're alone in this. Yes. And it's a lie. So you think, I'm it. Like, I have to deal with this myself in silence or alone.
Absolutely. Right? And Lucas hit on that on Sunday in the message, but it was really important for me that people knew what was happening. Yeah. Like, that's a really hard conversation to have with people. Having to, he told this story, but the first time, I mean, we were on our way to my parents' house, which is in Illinois. So it was a 5-hour drive. And, to have to call my mom and say, Mom, this is happening and I'm scared. And, my mom had not been through that, but it was, something that she was like, no, we'll meet you at the hospital. And but to be like, to not have to individually go to every person I know and say, I was pregnant and now I'm not. It's a really awkward conversation. And so people we don't want to have to say that, we don't want to air that pain, but then to your point, like, we just keep it in. And I think that there's something so freeing about, just knowing, I mean, and for those of you listening, there are so many people that want to speak into your life about this. A lot of our pastoral and staff members have been through this experience. Like, this is not something that you have to do alone.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I think a lot of couples, it's not just the wives, it's couples deal with is, I think it's surrounded by this guilt or shame. I'm not sure what the word is, but we went on record and everybody celebrated with us and, oh, we're so happy for you. And now somehow I am letting them down. Right. I'm disappointing them, and then it's my fault. And
I know, it's so
Did
weird.
You guys feel that? Or
yes. The concept, like, it almost feels like making a retraction.
Yeah.
Like the newspaper, like we made this statement, but now we have to retract it because it was wrong. And so, like, that idea of I don't know, it's really like, I remember when we finally got pregnant with Evie, our oldest biological child, I took so many pregnancy tests because I was so scared.
I just want to make sure. I don't want to tell anybody. I just want to make sure. I mean, I probably took 10 pregnancy tests before I even had my first doctor's appointment because I was so nervous. Yeah. I didn't want to have that experience again. Right.
Well, I remember too, we did that where it was like our first pregnancy, we told people fairly early, not like right away, but pretty early. And then our second pregnancy that also ended in miscarriage, we waited till like 22 weeks. I mean, we waited a while. And then when we got pregnant with Evie, we're like, we're going to step out in faith.
Right.
And we're not going to be afraid of this. And we told people pretty soon in that pregnancy. And we didn't wait because we just said, we trust God. We know He's going to be faithful to us. Yeah. We're going to do that.
Again, it's that struggle of, okay, we want people to know, yet, the last time we did this, and then everyone was disappointed. And it's a weird, it sounds funny to say it, but it's almost like we're throwing this big party. Nah, we're canceling the party.
Yeah,
it's like we didn't cancel the party, but it feels like that.
It does.
Well, and even in all of those issues, that was why I picked the scriptures that I did, because like I said, we went on this journey through grief and we went to grief counseling together. I was in this weird cycle of, oh, you are feeling this, so I have to be strong for you, so I'm going to pull away from this. And so then that made her think that, I didn't care about it. And I was like, no, I'm trying to be strong. But I had to go get answers for this because, like I said, I grew up in the Christian church. And again, I think that's why we don't talk about and don't take stands on things like abortion, because we go, well, you have an opinion and I have an opinion, and we're kind of waiting for science to sort it out. And I'm going, I had never in my life, like I said, we were on that trip, and I'm going, I've read the scripture 1,000 times, and it never occurred to me that the Holy Spirit is recognizing and telling Mary, you are pregnant with the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in His fullness, roughly 3 days after Gabriel. Like, I don't even know when conception of that happens, but it's Gabriel told her, you're going to carry a baby. 3 days later, the Holy Spirit is going, you do have Jesus Christ in your womb. He's a person, he has an identity and a purpose and a direction in his life. And like, that was just like one of those things I was like, I did not feel like I had solid ground to make that statement like that and say, oh no, like life begins at conception, because I was like, I don't know, because it's like that Ecclesiastes, when does the soul come to the baby? I don't really know. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, like I can stand on this. I can stand on the word, even though I don't know, even though I have uncertainty, whether it's, scientifically, politically, whatever it is, I'm going to stand on the word of.
Yeah. And that's important to have that foundation, because in those moments of, emotion and hurt and pain, we start to try to reason and make sense of what just happened. And if we're not careful, then we can easily slip into listening to culture and to the lies and convincing ourselves, well, it really wasn't a baby anyway. Like it, and so it makes me feel a little better, and we'll just move on, because I was pregnant, but there wasn't a baby in there. No, there was.
Yeah.
And we do that to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So here's a question. You didn't really address it, but I'll jump in and throw a bomb into the middle.
Excellent.
So did you ever feel that emotion of anger in the midst of that? Not just an anger maybe towards God, but someone who, like, they're not even married and they're pregnant. And did you ever have those kinds of feelings of anger? And I'm kind of laughing because we felt that.
And the circumstances at the time. I mean, he said we were going to my parents. I was throwing my sister a baby shower that weekend. So my sister was not married. She had was an accidental pregnancy. And after I kind of processed what had happened, and again, we were at my parents, and it was all very weird. But I remember being so mad, just so mad, and just feeling like I've done everything right.
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. They're not, they don't even love you. They're not.
Yeah. And we went on actually our miscarriages got us on the journey to do foster care. But then that was the whole other set of, look at all these people who are terrible parents, and they they just keep having kids, right? Like, I just remember having that mentality and feeling like, at the time I teach college, and I had a student who was pregnant, and I was like, all these people, it seems like it's so easy. Why is this not happening for us? Yes,
that
absolutely.
Emotion of anger and frustration and confusion, and it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
What was interesting, though, is I think at one point your sister had come to you and said that. Yeah. Like, she even acknowledged, she said, this isn't fair. Like, you guys are, should be able to have a child. And like I did a lot of anger too, just in different ways, where it was like I saw other people, but like there was a time where God and I kind of had to have it out, and that was when I went on that journey to find out. I was like what in the world? Like, I asked, like when Charissa started, it's called spotting, like started bleeding, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pray in faith, and we're gonna be healed. It's gonna be fine, And we didn't even know at the time. Like, basically, I was praying. She had already lost the baby, and we just didn't know what was happening medically,
right.
And so I'm praying for the healing of a child that was already gone. And so I was really angry about that. I was angry at myself, because then I started going through my life and going, well, these are the sins that I'm committing at the time. And I bet that God is punishing me for that. So now it's my fault, and I'm angry at myself and all those things. And so, like, those truths that I was trying to share on Sunday morning is like that, is those things that I had to wrestle with, is God's not punishing me. He loves me. And, he punished Jesus Christ, and he forgives me. So God's not killing my baby to get back at me.
Right.
That's just such a sick thing. But I was just angry. I didn't know where to place my anger versus placing it at, well, I need to get angry at disease, and I need to get angry at sin and the devil, and fight for my family.
Yeah, and those emotions get so messed up.
They do.
Like in our head, like we go to some crazy places. And so I know this is common. I don't know if you've felt it at all, but it's a common thing. So I'm angry inside towards this person who's now pregnant, right? for no reason other than they're pregnant and I'm
Right.
not. So now I'm angry at you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to, I don't even want to see you. I don't want
Yes.
to be around
yeah.
you. And then I get angry because I wasn't invited to the baby shower.
Yeah.
Right. But I wouldn't have gone anyway. But now I'm angry. But they're confused. They're like, I don't know. Should we invite Charissa?
Right.
It's going to be weird. I don't want to put her. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah.
many different thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
People get scared to tell you that they're pregnant. You know,
Yeah.
like they're like your friends that are like, "Hey, we're pregnant," and we're like, "We're so happy for you," and they're like, "We didn't know if you were gonna be happy about that."
When they feel apologetic, like especially again, because we had told our story, people felt like, I'm sorry that
Yeah.
I'm pregnant. And, and I would just say to that, it is painful when you're the one who's dealing with, I remember I was invited to a number of baby showers and it was hard. And
On like Mother's Day celebrations.
Mother's Day was really hard for several years. And, I feel like though you can't completely withdraw yourself from everything. And people want to love you, they just don't know how. And so I think that it's important if you are the person feeling that anger, that hurt, that pain, to also extend grace. People want to love you. They really, if they've not been through it, they don't know how to love you in that moment. And so again, that community, putting a community around yourself who can come and say, we know how much this hurts, is going to be an important part of that healing journey.
Right. And to realize, oh, you've been there too.
Yes.
Like you understand this.
Right.
I don't know exactly what you're feeling because we're not the same people, but I can relate because I've been down that road before.
Right.
Well, and you and I had that conversation, and you said that was something that was really important for you and Trudy as well. That when somebody would just come up and say, "I've been there,"
Yep.
like I understand.
And you just like, oh, I guess this isn't something that's unique and
Right.
and out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it doesn't other you.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
So what for you? What was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome? The biggest hurt that needed to be healed within you that enabled you to move forward?
Man, I think probably for me, and like I said, it may sound silly. Like the scriptures that I use, I'm like they sound like these like odd corners of the Bible, but literally that passage in Job, like I remember reading it and listening to it and just kind of crying about it and just feeling it in my soul like this kind of release, because I literally had to say that where I was like, and don't get me wrong, like this is how I felt at the time. I just felt like, man, how selfish do I have to be angry at God or whatever and say, I wanted my child to be here on this earth with me for 60, however long I'm going to live while, that child's here, and it's going to suffer pain and, all these different things, could be subject to sin and, like, who knows, might go off the rails and end up in hell. And it's like, but I want that because I want to walk them down the aisle and I want to see them go to prom and I want to hold them. And I was like, those are all loving things, but to me, it almost got to be selfish where I was like, and just release that and go, God is taking care of my child. Like I have a child, it's in heaven, like, and that where I say like, it's not that I'm replacing my children with new children. It's that I'm having additional children.
Right. Yeah.
So we say like we have 2 adopted, 2 bio, and 2 in heaven. I didn't, because people said, well, you lost 2 babies and God gave you 2 babies to replace them. And I'm like, it's not a replacement, it's an addition.
Right.
And so that really healed something inside of me.
Yeah, and we didn't lose them. We know where they are.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
They're not lost.
Yeah, they're not
definitely.
lost. They're with Jesus. We know.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
And it's like, I say that at funerals where I'm like, we are sad because we lost somebody, but if they're a believer, man, they are not sad. They are in the arms of Christ.
Exactly.
And so I went, and then I had to transfer that to my children and go, man, they are not sad. They are in the arms of Christ. I'm sad. And I can trust God with the care of my children.
Yeah.
I think that it's interesting because Kids World just started a new series, but Evie came home with this paper that said hope. is believing that something good can come out of something bad.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really beautiful definition of hope. And so I will say for me, the word hope was something that I really had to hold on to. And I had to almost force myself to believe that there was hope.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that, I mean, heaven is a very reassuring thing for me. I have the hope also that my children are in heaven, but just the hope that, again, that God can take this situation and that he did not cause. Right. And I always want to make sure, you know, like God didn't do this. God didn't cause this to happen to us. Yeah. God didn't want to give us a story to tell people, right? But that God can take that, and now that is a way that we offer hope to
Correct.
Other people.
Yep.
And so that was something that for me and that whole process, I really, it was just the word hope. I had to cling to that word hope, that there is hope. I believe that there is hope. I know it in my head. I'm going to try to get that connection into my heart. And, you know, standing on those truths really helped.
I know we're running out of time. We only have a couple of minutes left, and we've been talking predominantly about miscarriage and, you know, those that have, you know, gone through that experience. We also have the infertility issue that people are embarrassed. They have shame and confusion wrapped around that. Yeah. We have the abortion issue and the people who are just carrying around just loads of guilt and condemnation. And would you agree with me that there is hope?
Yes.
Even
Absolutely.
in those, like it's all encompassing, that there are people who have been there. They've just not gone as public. Yeah. There are women who have experienced the pain of abortion and the regret of that and have walked through it that are there. Right?
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
are people who have dealt with infertility, maybe are still dealing with infertility, and they're there to walk through that. You're not alone,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
so for everyone listening, watching, you're not alone in this.
Right.
And the best thing you can do is not walk through it alone and tell somebody. I joke with Charissa that I'd say that God is the Bob Ross of our lives. Yeah. Where people used to send that artist, they would send him the squiggle, and then he'd be like, and he'd turn it into this masterpiece.
Exactly.
And it's like he didn't make the squiggle, but he can sit there and but you have to send it to him.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us on the 167. Don't walk through your pain and grief alone. There are people who love you, care about you, and want to be there on the journey with you. Stay tuned for a 7-minute story that's coming right up.
Hey, welcome back to 7-Minute Stories on the 167. I'm Lucas Motley, and I am here with the Alexa Becker.
That's right.
So, you're going to be talking to us about your 7-minute story tonight, and are you ready?
I am.
Take it away.
All right. So, I've always grown up around this area, and I started off with going to church with my grandparents. So my parents would drop me off every Saturday night, every single Saturday, and we would eat dinner, we would watch a show, and then Sunday morning we'd all get ready in our nicest clothes and head off to church. It was something I just knew as routine growing up, and then I started getting into my teens, getting a little bit of an attitude.
Got a little old for the Sunday dresses.
Yeah, a little old. And then I started playing soccer, and so then it would sort of interfere with soccer games and things like that. And I felt like I really was frustrated with going to church. It was long at the time, it was boring, and I always felt like it was just attacking me almost. Like everything I was hearing was just like, oh, I'm a sinner. This is what I'm doing wrong. And I'm not going to get better. And I didn't want to get better. So that's kind of how it started. And then I kind of just stepped away from the church. And I have 2 other sisters. And they really fell into church when I was stepping away. So it was kind of hard at the beginning. I was like, I'm just the attitude.
You're
and
the rebel.
I was the rebel of the family. So it was fine at the beginning. And then they got invited to certain things with my grandparents at the church. And was kind of feeling left out. But I just kind of stuck with what I was doing, and I got in with the wrong friend group. It's just more of someone who I thought I wanted to be, and so I made friends with those people, and they really were not church people. So then I ended up going to JUCO, and that's where I met Alexis. And at first, I thought she did not like me, but
I'm pretty sure everybody, when they meet Alexis, feels like that.
yeah, I've heard that from a few people. But then we started talking, and we started hanging out with her and Logan, and then me and my husband right now. And so we just started hanging out, and then they wanted to go to their life group, but we wanted to still hang out with them. So they're like, do you just want to come join? And I was like, absolutely not. And Austin, he was like, oh yeah, we have to go. That way we can hang out with them after. It'll be fine. And I was super, super nervous about that. Just everything with the church, I was still feeling all those emotions, like, you know, it's just going to tell me what I'm not doing right and all sorts of things. I was just super nervous about it. But I went, and it was really good. It was your life group.
No.
And I know.
Yeah.
I know. So yeah, it was really good, and we just learned more and more and more. And we started going to church more, and we were kind of in between New Life and Life Church. And we would kind of just occasionally go, and then you asked us, what's it going to take to get you to keep going to New Life? And so I think we thought about it.
I liked you guys. I enjoyed your company. You're a good couple.
Good. So yeah, we thought about it, and we just talked a little bit more, and so we decided to go to New Life solely, and it's been super, super good. And we really love it, New Life. And we've met so many good people, and just found new ways of learning and new ideas to just being a Christian and loving God and all the good things that I wanted. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit in your story about, because you said something that popped out to me where you said, I was hanging out with this group of friends because that's who I thought I wanted to be. Like, what was the things that kind of drew you in there? Like, what were the things that you were like, was it culture? Or was it just, I kind of want to be liked? Like, what were the things that were drawing you into that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was seeing the popular kids and wanting to have friends and wanting to be popular. And most of the time that meant, going out to parties, drinking here and there, doing the things I shouldn't be, and just really rebelling around against my parents, honestly, and just doing everything I wasn't supposed to do.
But you had acceptance in that friend group then.
Yeah, for sure. So, but I eventually realized that's just not my personality. That's honestly not what I want to do or who I want to be. And it took a really long time to realize that, and how my personality is exactly who I should be, and I should find friends around that. So.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially young girls. They struggle with being accepted and who they are and really being comfortable in their own skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what advice would you have given your previous self if you could go back and be like, hey?
Oh, a lot. I don't know. It's just being yourself. That's really all I can say, is just making the jokes that I wanted to make and just letting loose and stop worrying about all the little things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how's things been different? Like, you guys been at New Life for a while now. You're in life group. I think you're still hanging out with Logan and Alexis, unfortunately. But
I know.
yeah.
They got us stuck.
What do you think has been the biggest thing for you that's really stood out?
I think the biggest thing is just being surrounded by so many people and feeling like I have a community, and I have people that I can go to no matter what. Even if I'm feeling weird about this situation or that situation, I know there's always somebody around who I can talk to. And it's not always easy to go and talk to people about my issues, but I think just being able to open up and,
Not go
that's
through it
the biggest
alone.
thing. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for coming on and sharing your 7-minute story. We'll see you guys next time here on the 167. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.